Hello students, good afternoon. Hope all of you are doing well at home, wherever you are. Students, we are meeting up once again, right, to another session of CL1, Advanced Audit and Assurance, your discussion with regard to focusing on your examination. So students, today in our session, we are planning to discuss from the last past paper that was there. That was the June 2024 paper. A question, two questions actually, question number 6 and 7, where most of the students get it not good, right? We have seen the marks have been bit low and the student performance is also not that up to the kind of the standard that the examiner is expecting. So because of that, students, we have decided that we need to have a kind of a session which is totally focused on the CL1 last two questions, question number 6 and 7. So this question number 6 and 7, students, is I would say two of the most important questions coming in your paper. Why I am saying that? Students, if you see, if you can remember, question number, section A of your CL1 Advanced Audit and Assurance paper is 10 multiple choice questions. Each question will give you 2 marks. So 10 into 2, 20 marks will be allocated for that area, section 1. And on the other hand, students, you have section number 2, which is that 10 marks into 4 questions, 40 marks. But this CL1 paper, section 3, I would say, is the most important as well as the area which you have to focus on, section 3. Why I am saying that, students? If you traditionally approach this paper, the traditional way, right, is where that you use the reading time to read whatever you want. And then, students, you just go there and try to hammer the paper. But that won't work. Why? If you don't manage your time, you will not have sufficient adequate time to write a proper answer to section 3. The danger is section 3 gives you 40 marks. 20 marks for one question, 20 into 2, 40 marks from this area. May area again lakunu 40යි ළමයි. 40 marks. So if you run out of time, වෙලාව මදි වුණොත්, if you run out of time to answer section 3, that would be a disaster in your paper. Would be a disaster in the paper. So ideally, students, it's really important that section 3 you properly strategize and you properly answer section 3. So my advice to all of you, for the people who are joining here live through Facebook, through the Zoom session, through YouTube, as well as for the people who are watching the recording of this session, is that, students, very important that to read section 3, question number 6 and 7, utilize your reading time. Prior to the exam, examiner gives you a reading time, lamai, right? Examiner gives you a reading time prior to the exam. 15 minutes reading time is there. That's golden time period. It's like gold, right? That time period is gold. Gold. That time period you got to utilize to answer, to read question number 6 and 7. So if you don't do that, students, I have a doubt that sometimes you may not plan out your answering and marking. So my advice, use the reading time, the 15 minutes prior to answering, to read section 3, question number 6 and 7. Okay, so see the amount of reading you got to do. See the amount of reading you got to do. It's a hell of a lot of area you have to read, right? Make a mara area now at the exam pressure, at the last 1 hour, if you try to read this, students, that's the train will go, right? So therefore, question number 6 and 7, please read at the reading time. Don't read anything else. Don't read anything else. When a mukut kiwana try karan 6 and 7 only. Remember that. So let's try to read this question. So approximately examiner says recommended time period for this section is 72 minutes. මේ area එකට ළමයි විනාඩි 72ක්. That is some 1 hour and 15 minutes වගේ area එකක්, right? It's a tremendous area. Tremendous area. So 1 hour and 15 minutes you have to allocate for this. Remember. So shall we start reading? වැඩේ පටන් ගමුද? Look at the first section number 3, question 6, part A. Look at it. Hopefully everybody can read, see it, right? Let me see whether you guys can see. Okay, you can read, see, no? Right. Look at it, students. And also when you are reading, students, focus more on this action verb. When you are reading also, focus more on the action verb. Action verb, examiner will ask you to assess, realize, discuss, analyze, right? Based on the action verb only your answer should be, right? Based on the action verb only your answer has to be developed. So remember that as well. See, read the question. Assess the risk of material misstatements, including the risk of fraud at the entity level and the financial statement level that will be relevant for the audit of SSL for the year ended 31st March 2024. Assess, kind of evaluate and come out with the outcome. Assess the risk of material misstatements, including the fraud risk. So in the given area, given case, there can be, students, risk of material misstatements. මේ area එකේ risk of material misstatements තියෙන්න පුළුවන්, and you have to identify them and you have to present it, including fraud risk. There can be fraud risk as well. 31st March 2024. You are expected to provide at least 6 such risk of material misstatements. There can be 6 such risk of material misstatements. So see, what are the risk of material misstatements, students, you have to capture. ඔයා capture කරන්න ඕන risk of material misstatements මොනවද? What sort of risk of material misstatements you got to capture? What is the risk of material misstatements, ළමයි? Yes, risk of material misstatements are situations where accounting framework can be deviated by the management. It can be inherent risk or it can be a control risk. You remember in Sri Lanka auditing standard number 200 we discussed audit risk is a function of inherent risk into control risk into detection risk. So inherent risk and control risk taken together is risk of material misstatements. So we have to capture inherent risk and control risk that will create risk of material misstatements. So අපි ළමයි අල්ලන්න ඕන inherent risk නුයි control risk නුයි. That will create material misstatements in the financial statements. ඒ වැඩේදී ඔය වැඩේ කරනකොට internal control weaknesses we have to capture, where that will create risk of material misstatements in the financial statements. And also let's say estimated figures, the frauds, because here frauds also examiner want us to emphasize in risk assessment. We have to do. Look at part B. You plan to perform substantive analytical procedures on sales. So you plan to perform some numbers game, analytical procedures, maybe some ratio analysis, some trends, some relationships you want to perform. So you plan to perform substantive analytical procedures on sales. Assess the feasibility of performing substantive analytical procedures on sales for the year ended 31st March 2024. Assess the feasibility, right? Whether we can perform analytical procedures on sales. We have to remember, students, analytical procedures, Sri Lanka auditing standard number 530, right? Analytical procedures we perform on the numbers given by the management. So numbers given by the management, mostly, students, we have to be very particular on whether those numbers are reliable. Is the management's accounting system is reliable? Okay, accounting system එක reliable ද? We have to be, because on that numbers only we are performing our procedures. We calculate ratios, we calculate relationships, we calculate trends. If those numbers are not reliable, students, we can't perform analytical procedures on them. No point, no use. So we have to be 100% clear that these numbers are okay. That's why Sri Lanka Auditing Standard number 500, audit evidence says information is reliable if those internal controls are reliable only. Controls reliable nang vitarai lamai information reliable wenne. So we have to be very careful whether the numbers provided by the management in the draft financial statements are reliable only. අපි ඒකට check කරන්න වෙනවා. Numbers reliable කියලා බලන්න වෙනවා. Otherwise we can't do substantive procedures. Look at part C. SSL has produced the annual report on the board of directors on the affairs of the company along with audited financial statements for the year ended 31st March 2024. SSL, maybe the client, has produced the annual report of the board of directors. Management provide the annual report. Annual report was provided of the company along with the audited financial statements for the year ended 31st March 2024. So annual report together with the audited accounts have given. Make a Q gamang. When I say annual report with the audited financial statements, when I say that Sri Lanka Auditing Standard number 720, SLA US 720, what's that? Other information presented with the financial statements. Financial statements ekka dena other information monawada. We have to be satisfied with. අපි මේ other information ගැන satisfy වෙන්න ඕන. So what are the other information that are presented? SLA US 720 speaks about it. Explain the auditor's responsibility on the annual report of the board of directors of the affairs of the company. Because students, can you remember SLA US 720, other information? Our audit is on the financial statements only. We are not concerned about the other information. Like what? Chairman's report, management's report, corporate governance report, risk management reports, which are contained in the annual report other than the financial statements. Our audit is on audited financial statements. But students, SLA 720 says, yes, auditors do not have a responsibility on auditing other information in the annual report. But before the annual report is issued, we have to read the other information to identify whether there are any material misstatements in other information as well. We have to read other information. Otherwise, people who are reading the annual report with the audited financial statements and other information, they may see contradictions. Api deepu figures ui, management එකේ දීපු figures ui annual report එකේ වෙනස්කම් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. There can be contradictions, inconsistencies between other information and audited financial statements. So our responsibility on that. Read this again. Read A, B, C back again. Read A, B, C. Okay. Right. Students, so we have to capture 6 risk of material misstatements. 6 risk of material misstatements. Situations where material misstatements can happen. Right? Oya vadedi in front of A, these standards, write down. These are the standards that will be useful for you to develop an answer. What answer එක develop කරගන්න අදාළ standards ටික තමයි මේ ළමයි. A, write down the standards. Sri Lanka Auditing Standard number 200. objective of an audit of financial statements. SLAS 200 is relevant. Then 315, understanding of the client and risk assessment. SLAS 200, 315. Then 330, auditor's response to assess risk. 330, 200, 315, risk assessment. 330, response to risk. 240, responsibility for frauds. Auditor's responsibility for frauds. 240. Your answer can be developed lamai from those 4 standards. A standards hatarin what answer develop karana puluwa. Right? So part B, the feasibility of substantive analytical procedures. The answer can be developed from SLAS 500. Sri Lanka auditing standard number 500 will help you to develop an answer for that. Audit evidence. Then 530, 530, standards will help you. Right. Last one, part C, students, SLAS 720, Hatsiya Vissa. 720 will help you to answer part C. Right. So shall we read? Let's read, everybody. Look at the question. See, Smart Solutions Private Limited, Lamai, Smart Solutions Private Limited. Any important area that has to come to your mind? Private Limited. When I say private limited, Smart Solutions Private Limited, any important factor that came into your mind? Private Limited kiwa monari olluta avada lamai. Smart Solutions Private Limited. Private Limited kiyapu gama wage olluta mokadda aave? What came to your mind? Sujivan, is it low risk or high risk? From internal control perspective. Now think, now if it is a private limited, from the point of view of governance, control environment, now those kind of company students, yes, low risk in terms of regulations. In terms of regulatory environment, you are not listed, so therefore no kind of corporate governance involved. But private limited, from internal control perspective, I have a problem. Why? Owner managed company. Most of the private limiteds are owner managed, right? Godak kelawata private limited දේවල් lamai owner managed කරපු companies. Owner managed companies. So the problem that can arise, right? The problem that can arise is owner managed means my car, my petrol. I can do whatever I want in the company. So most of the time in private limited liability companies, we know personal expenditures are paid through the company bill. Personal expenditure given in company bill again. So that risk is there. So owner managed company, we have that problem. Okay. So, right? Keep that in your mind. Smart Solutions Private Limited, SSL, trades mobile phones, accessories, desktops, laptops, printers and other office equipments. They trade in mobile phones, printers, accessories, desktop. They trade. Trade. Any risk in these items? The items are risk. When you are trading in mobile phones, desktop, laptops, printers and all. Any risk? Guys, people who are joined live, any risk there? Trading in mobile phones, laptops, desktops and things like that. Any risk that you identify? Now we have to capture risk of material misstatements. No? Any risk? Now these are items which are prone for technology, right? Technology is something that we have to take into account. These items, the technology rapidly changes. Technology venas වෙනවා. So if any case, if your sales comes down, sales adu not, there will be stockpile of items that will be built up in your inventory. But this inventory, if not sold, it can result in slow moving, obsolete stocks. Obsolete, slow moving stock, you won't be able to sell at even at the cost. Your net realizable value will be lesser than the cost. Are you agree with me on that? ඒකට මාත් එක්ක agree ද ළමයි ඔයගොල්ලෝ? Slow moving inventory, their cost will be, their net realizable value will be lesser than the cost. එයාලගේ net realizable value එක ළමයි cost එකට වඩා අඩු වෙන්න පුළුවන්. So that problem can arise. So therefore we have to be very careful on this. මේවා සම්බන්ධව අපි සෑහෙන්න careful වෙන්න ඕන. Right? We have to be very careful. So that risk is also there if sales comes down, because we still don't know. Let's read. SSL has been the authorized agent for a number of mobile phone and office equipment brands. So there are authorized agents here like Abans, like Singer. They are the authorized agent here in Sri Lanka for many of these brands. Items are imported from the manufacturers. Most of their products are imported from the manufacturer directly. Manufacturer can import items then. Any risk there? If you are manufacturing items directly from importers, import again items manufacture කරනවා මොනවා risk එකක් තියෙනවද ළමයි? Definitely there is a risk. What is the risk? Foreign exchange fluctuation. Imported from the manufacturers. Foreign exchange fluctuation. How does that happen? Go to 2022. ඒ කාලෙට වගේ යන්න. At the time of you import the item, when you order the goods, your pricing will be determined by $1 300 rupees. Dollar එකක් රුපියල් 300යි. Order එක දානකොට. Agree? So let's say you order $1 million worth of goods. $1 million එකක් වටින බඩු ගෙන්නුවා කියලා හිතන්නකෝ. It take about 1 month's time for the supplier to ship the goods. Another 1 month time will take the goods to arrive to Sri Lanka. So at least 2 to 3 months it will take. At the time of you ordering the goods, dollar is 300. So you are ordering $300 million worth of 300 million rupees worth of items. $1 million worth of goods, 300 rupees per dollar. So 1 million into 300 million worth of goods you are ordering. Imagine students, it takes 2 months time to come to Sri Lanka. You to pay for those goods. Pay කරන්න ඕන කියන්නකෝ. At the time of paying, when you buy the dollars from the market, pay කරන වෙලාවේ dollars market එකෙන් ගන්නකොට dollar will be about, let's say, 360. Dollar එක එතකොට ළමයි 360යි. So what? Same $1 million you have to pay, but you have to pay 360 million rupees. So the loss, exchange loss from import, one shipment is 60 million rupees ළමයි. There were businesses who, during the crisis time, financial economic crisis of Sri Lanka, whose retained earnings were wiped off because of these exchange losses. That is not because of doing business. That's exchange loss lamai. Sometimes retained earnings, one shipment 60 million, see. If you do about 5-6 shipment, 300 million loss. Go on now, business ivarai. Remember the situation. Okay, so those kind of foreign exchange fluctuations are there. So sometimes if you don't account these foreign exchange movements, your assets and liabilities will be overstated as well. Assets and liabilities overstate වෙන එකක් වෙනවා නම් ඒවා මේව account කරන්නේ නැත්නම් හරියට. So that foreign exchange risk is also there. You understood? ඒක තේරුණාද ළමයි? Did you understood it? Can I have your response, people who have joined live, whether you understood it or not? Put yes or no. Yes or no කියලා දාන්න බලන්න. Whether you understood it or not. Thanks, Hasida. Thank you. Others, how about it? Hope under control. No, thanks. Sujivan, thank you. Right? So let's see. So that risk is also there, foreign exchange fluctuation risk. Now let's see. The import restrictions here, the import restrictions imposed and the devaluation of the LKR, that had happened, no? Import restrictions and the devaluation of LKR in the foreign exchange market in the previous year has impacted SSL's operations. So the point I discussed with you has actually impacted the business. Business was impacted. As a result of the above conditions, SSL's retained earnings turned to accumulated losses, mainly due to the impact of exchange losses. Due to the impact of the exchange losses, entire retained earnings were wiped off. And decreased its profitability as well. In financial year 23-24, an improvement was noted in the market conditions with the stabilization of the Sri Lankan rupee. So rupee stabilized, students. So from 365, it came to about 295 again. Rupee gradually appreciated, right? So first risk of material misstatements, I think we have identified. That's the foreign exchange fluctuations. If you do not recognize foreign exchange fluctuations in the books, what can go wrong? The assets and liabilities will be overstated or understated. If you don't take them to the books correctly, there can be a problem. Assets and liabilities will be overstated or understated. Asset liability lamai overstated wenna puluwan, understated wenna puluwan. Let's read. See. However, in January 2024, value added tax VAT was increased to 18%, and previously exempted items also became liable for VAT. If you can remember, 2024 January, all, I would say, electronic items which were earlier exempted from VAT were also liable to VAT. It was VAT liable, right? So this resulted in a decrease in sales volume during the last quarter of 2023-24. That means last quarter again, 1st of January 2024 to 31st March 2024. Last quarter sales dropped because price increases because of VAT. VAT nisa lamai price වැඩි වුණා. So ඒක නිසා sales drop වුණා. Sales drop වෙනකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? Sometimes some of your stocks may not be able to sell. Stocks will be piling up in the warehouse. Stocks එන්නෙන් ළමයි warehouse එකේ pile up වෙනවා. Stocks may be piling up in the warehouse, you may unable to sell them. That problem is also there. A problem එකත් build up වෙනවා. So there is a risk of material misstatement. මොකද material misstatement එක? Stocks may be piling up at the warehouse. You are unable to sell them. විකුණ ගන්න අමාරුයි. So what will happen? If you do a net realizable value calculation, net realizable value will be maybe lower than its cost. If you don't recognize that loss, your profits are overstated, your stock is also overstated. ඔයා ඒක recognize කරේ නැත්නම් profit උත් overstate වෙලා stock එකත් overstate වෙනවා. That risk of material misstatement also there because of that. ඒක නිසා ඒ risk of material misstatement එකක් තියෙනවා. So we identified foreign exchange issue, then the inventory overstatement risk also there. අපි තාම පල්ලෙහාට කියමු. Right? We'll read further down. SSL has 3 sales centers in Colombo, and it has appointed 10 authorized dealers as well. They have 3 sales centers in Colombo. Colombo, they have 3 sales centers, and they have 10 authorized dealers as well. Sales are recognized at the point of delivery. Sales recognized at the point of delivery. Deliver කරනකොට තමයි revenue recognize කරන්නේ. SLFRS 15 revenue. And no other conditions are attached. Example like returning of goods. The general credit period for dealers is 30 to 60 days. Revenue recognition, do we have problem? Revenue recognition, do we have problem? Yes, what is the problem? Revenue is recognized when the goods are sent to the dealers. At that time you record that as a revenue. But let's say, students, dealers, if they don't sell, what will happen? You have to accept those goods because dealers are dealers. When the goods are not sold, they will not keep it with them. They will again return that to you. Goods return. Right? The certain mobile phone type, if that is not sold, dealers will not keep it. No, dealers will give it back to you. So at that time, whatever the sales that you have recognized, you have to bring it down. So remember everybody, revenue recognition is a problem. Because revenue we have to recognize based on the contract between the buyer and the seller. You know, no? SLFRS 15. Revenue we got to recognize based on the contract between the buyer and the seller. So there is a risk that when the goods are dispatched instantly, if you recognize revenue, sometimes if the goods are returned, you have not reduced that. ඒක reduce කළා නැහැ. So that risk is there. Revenue may be overstated ළමයි. Because of the revenue recognition policy they are adopting. Because of the revenue recognition policy they are adopting, revenue may be overstated. That risk is also there. Go to next one. During the year, SSL shifted its premises to a new place. They shifted to a new place and terminated the earlier agreement. So earlier lease agreement they terminated, they shifted to a new place. අලුත් තැනකට ඒගොල්ලෝ ගියා. And previous lease agreement they terminated. The signed lease agreement is available. Any risk of material misstatement there? Yes, what's that? They moved on to a new premises ළමයි. අලුත් තැනකට ගියා. And the previous premises lease agreement, now they have stopped it. So derecognition of lease has to be done. Otherwise, assets will be overstated. Lease creditors, lease liability will be also overstated if you don't remove the previous lease from the accounts. So risk of material misstatements. පරණ lease එක accounts වලින් අයින් කරන්න ඕන ළමයි. You got to remove the previous lease agreement and lease amounts from the financial statements. So that's also part. ටිකක් fraud risk නුත් අපි හොයාගන්න ඕන. Examiner says us to capture fraud risk as well. See. Look at it. Key members of the finance team resigned. Key members of the finance team resigned in April 2023. April 2023, key members of the finance team resigned from their employment. As a result, a new team took over the responsibilities in May 2023. Problem or not? Students, key members of finance team resigning from Sri Lanka auditing standard number 240, frauds. From that standard perspective, you should be a bit worried. What are you worried about? Finance team as a lot resign. Set එකම resign නෝනා. Why? You need to pick that into your mind. ඒක ටිකක් ඔළුවට ගන්න ඕන. ඇයි මේ set එකම resign නුනේ? Maybe what's that? Fraud risk factor or fraud red flag. ඒක තමයි fraud risk factor එකක්ද නැත්නම් fraud red flag එකක්ද? Finance team එකම resign වෙන එක. Entire finance team resigning, is it a fraud risk factor or fraud red flag? What do you think? It's kind of a fraud red flag, no? You find out, ඇයි මේ කට්ටිය ඔක්කොම resign වෙන්නේ එකපාර? Problem. One or two resigning here and there, it's not a problem ළමයි. When the entire finance team resigning, we have a trouble. We have a problem. Right? See. As a result, new team took over the responsibilities in May 2023. So, students, we have a trouble, we have a problem. Finance team resigning is a fraud risk indicator. එක set එකම එකට අයින් වෙනවා. සමහරට එක හොරකමක් කරලා ඔක්කොම කට්ටිය එකට අයින් වුණා. Can happen or not? Can happen. See, you are the audit manager of the audit of SSL. අපිට දැන් ගොඩාක් හම්බුණා, right? We have identified numerous risk of material misstatements in terms of frauds, right? Frauds and material misstatements. You are the audit manager of the audit of SSL for the year ended 31st March 2024. The following were noted based on the draft financial statements for the year ended 31st March 2024. So these items were identified based on the draft financial statements as of 31st March 2024. See, the debtors age analysis, debtors analysis as at March 2024 was as follows. Debtors age analysis was as follows. If you take my debtors age analysis, you can, what's their credit policy? What's their recovery policy of the debtors? Their recovery policy of debtors is to allow a credit period for dealers 30 to 60 days. Dawas 30 right? They got to recover within 30 to 60 days. So if you sell within 30 to 60 days, you have to recover your items, your money. But what? Trade receivables 0 to 30 days, it's okay, 56 million. 56 million 0 to 30 days. Dawas 30ක් ඇතුළත මිලියන 50ක් එකතු කර ගන්න වාට තියෙනවා. That's good because your credit policy is 30 to 60 days. 31 to 60 days, 45.8 million. So that's also good, no? Okay, no? Still within the credit period, no? 60 days fine credit period ඇතුළේ. 61 to 90 days, 43.4 million. And above 90 days, 32.6 million. What's that? Students, approximately. Now, somewhere beyond here, මෙතනින් මෙහෙට 61 days and above is what? Is overdue. ඒක ළමයි, debtors are overdue. Receivables are overdue. එතන ළමයි receivables overdue වෙලා තියෙන්නේ 61කට වඩා වැඩි වුණා නම්. If more than 61 days, receivables are overdue. Agree? So, කොච්චර overdue debtors තියෙනවද? 43.4 plus 32.6. How much? 76 million වගේ debtors ඉන්නවා. Overdue. That means past due. Those debtors have not paid. Ideally, if the debtors are there, debtors who are not paid due yet, තාම ගෙවලා නැති debtors ලා. If you have that sort of debtors, what do you got to do? මොනවද කරන්න ඕන ළමයි? There has to be adequate impairment provision to be done. There has to be adequate provisioning, impairment provisioning has to be happening. ඇති වෙන්න impairment provision කරන්න ඕන. Why? Debtors are there who have not paid. So see, there is no significant difference in the impairment provision compared to the one made in previous year. No difference in impairment provision compared to the one made in previous year. The inventory balance is also as follows. So impairment වෙනස් වෙලත් නැහැ. There are a large number of debtors, about 76 million debtors who are overdue, for which you have to test them for impairment. But that has not been done. Impairment test වෙලා නැහැ. So there is a risk. එතන risk එකක් තියෙනවා ළමයි. Okay. So I would say impairment underprovided or not provided, impairment underprovided, receivables values overstated. Receivables overstated, impairment understated. Risk of material misstatement. Agree. Even though they had long overdue debtors, they have not provided for impairment. Risk of material misstatement. So look at inventory lamai. Inventory. 31st March 2023 and 31st March 2024. 23, 24 in millions. See, now what they have experienced, or Matakanang, in the earlier section, we have identified their revenues have come down. Sales came down because of 18% VAT that has imposed. 118ට ගහපු VAT එක හන්දලා තමයි sales පල්ලෙහාට ආවා. If sales came down, I told you at that time there is a risk that inventory may be piling up, not sold. Sales coming down means, students, whatever stocks you have already ordered may be still at the warehouse, no? You can see that from here. 275 million last year stock, this year has jumped to 446 million. Stocks increased by approximately 171 million. Million 171කින් about පොඩ මෙතන difference එක බැලුවොත් 171 million increase in inventory, and that's about 60% growth from the last year to this year. 60% growth in inventory, which is 171 million growth. Million 171 growth එක. Agree. So we have that problem. Sales coming down, but the inventory has gone up. So this inventory, this electronic item, they may not be sold. You should have ideally done provision. Make a provision කරන්න ඕන ළමයි. Earlier provision 92 for 275 million, but even though the inventory value has increased, you have only made 86.4 million inventory obsolescence provision. So provision not adequate. Provision එක හරියට ගල්ලත් නෑ ළමයි. So inventory provision for, I would say, slow moving stocks is not adequate. See, read it everybody. See, the sales manager closely monitors sales trends. Sales manager, his job is that closely monitor the sales trends. Sales prices are authorized by him. And the price list for each month is maintained and the system is updated. Any problem there? Better the problem go identify there. Anyone has identified the problem there? Sales manager closely monitor the sales trends. Sales prices are authorized by him. Any problem there? Yes, Hasida, good. Segregation of duties. Sales manager should not authorize the selling prices. Selling prices should be based on what? Selling prices should be based on the cost of the production or cost of the import that you have made. If you allow sales manager to do that, sales manager is in a sales mentality, in order to increase the sales, he will continue to put down the prices. He will do pricing undercutting to increase sales volume. But sometimes if you do that, you may go beyond your cost as well. Cost that problem can arise. Arise right? So sales manager should not be given the authority to change the sales prices. Sales prices when sales manager then see. And this can create window dressing risk as well, because if he is paid based on the level or volume of sales, he may continue to reduce the sales price to bring up the sales value. Sales value වැඩි කරන්න ළමයි මෙයා sales price එක එන්නේ නඩු කරයි. Okay, මොකද වෙන්නේ? Sales will increase but the profit will come down. See, the actual sales quantities by each product are maintained. These are reviewed by the management in monthly senior management meetings. So inventory quantities all are reviewed in the monthly meetings. Based on the trends, discounts and promotions are determined and documents. So based on the sales trends, discounts, promotions are determined. The finance manager participates in these meetings as well. Finance manager participates වෙලා විතරක් හරියනවද? He should be the person who is making the decision on pricing. He is only participating. The variable problem the variable compensation of the senior management is based on the targets provided to them, including revenue targets. Sales manager can do anything. Because why? He is the one who is handling the selling price, no? So since his salary is based on the revenue target achievement, he can do anything he wants. Right? So that's the now he feel like towards the year end my salary, my remuneration coming down. So I need to increase company sales, because why? It will have an impact on my remuneration, my salary. So he will price undercut and push the goods. That risk is there. So window dressing risk, fraudulent financial statement risk, that is also there. Hope you understood the question. So the examiner's question. 3 questions. Assess the risk of material misstatements, whether substantive analytical procedures are suitable, annual report responsibility. Shall we read this again? Or read it again. Read that everyone. Then we will answer. අපි ඊට පස්සේ ආන්සර් කරමු. While you are reading, try to develop the answer, right? So read ළමයි. Right. පොඩ්ඩක් බලාගෙන යන්න ළමයි. Just have a quick look. Right, so part A, assess the risk of material misstatement. Assess the risk of material misstatement, including the risk of fraud at the entity level and at the financial statement level that will be relevant for the audit of SSL for the year ended 31st March 2024. You are expected to provide at least 6 such risk of material misstatement. So, again, I am going back. Material misstatements mean, students, situations where accounting framework can be deviated. So, we have to identify them. So, we have identified more than 6. We will start with the first one. We will start with this impairment not provided on debtors. Right? Receivable impairment they have not done, no. So for overdue debtors, so therefore debtors have been overstated, provisions have been understated. So we will address that point. So write down below this, write down in your notebook. When assessing the status of SSL, when assessing the status of SSL, when assessing the status of SSL, comma, following risks of material misstatements. Following risks of material misstatements. Following risk of material misstatements were identified. Following risk of material misstatements were identified. Write down number one. Number one, risk of overstatement of receivables. Risk of overstatement of receivables. Risk of overstatement of receivables. So below that, write down the credit policy of SSL. The credit policy of SSL is to allow credit policy of SSL is to allow is to allow 30 to 60 days of credit. Is to allow 30 to 60 days of credit. Allow 30 to 60 days of credit. (30 to 60 days of credit). However, when evaluating the receivables age analysis, when evaluating the receivables age analysis, it was observed that there is approximately rupees 76 million receivables. There is approximately rupees 76 million worth of receivables approximately rupees 76 million worth of receivables. Which are more than 61 days overdue, which are more than 61 days overdue. 76 million worth of receivables which are more than 71 days overdue. Sorry, which are more than 61 days overdue. දවස් 60කට වඩා වැඩි. More than 61 days overdue. Full stop. More than 61 days overdue. Next line. Ideally, there has to be ideally there has to be adequate impairment and provisioning. Adequate impairment and provisioning. Adequate impairment and provisioning to be made adequate impairment and provisioning to be made on such debtors. To be made on such debtors. However, next line, however, there is little change in provisioning. එහෙම උනාට ළමයි provisioning වෙලා නැහැ. However, there is little change in provisioning. Little change in provisioning from 2023 to 2024. Little change in provisioning from 2023 to 2024. To 2024. This raises the risk of material misstatements. This raises, making වැඩි වෙනවා. This raises the risk of material misstatement of risk of material misstatement of overstatement of receivables. Receivables are overstated because of that, students, because provisions are not done. No. So receivables are overstatement of receivables. Overstatement of receivables and understatement of overstatement of receivables and understatement of liabilities and provisions. Liabilities and provisions. Overstatement of receivables and understatement of liabilities and provisions. Look at next one, lamai. Next එක බලන්න. Look at next one. Now in the next one, students, we will discuss about inventory related risk. What is the inventory related risk? Over the 2 years, there was about 171 million jump of inventory. but the provisions have not been done. Provisions have actually reduced. And also in the meantime, revenue has come down because of introduction of VAT, 18% VAT. Revenue came down. So stocks have gone up, provisions not increased. So what? There can be obsolete, slow moving stock for which the provisions have not been done. So inventory overstated, provisions have understated. That risk of material misstatement is there. So shall we write down? Right there. Next one. Second one, heading. දෙවෙනි එකේ heading එක ලියන්න තමයි overstatement of inventory. Overstatement of inventory. Overstatement of inventory. Overstatement of inventory. So below that, explain everybody. Explain it. There is a risk of overstatement of inventory. Risk of overstatement of inventory due to the possible non-recognition of possible non-recognition of provision for inventory. Provision for inventory. Possible non-recognition of provision for inventory. At a time when revenue comes down, at a time when the revenue comes down, building up of rupees 446 million worth of inventory. Inventory build up 446 million. Revenue comes down, comma, building up of rupees 446 million inventory. Building up of rupees 446 million inventory. Building up of rupees 446 million inventory. Which is which is 171 million worth of inventory, which is rupees 171 million worth of inventory, and more than 60% growth, and more than 60% growth in inventory, more than 60% growth in inventory, more than 60% growth in inventory, but the provision for obsolete inventory gone down, but the provision for obsolete inventory gone down by 6.2 million. But the provision for obsolete inventory has gone down by 6.2 million. Inventory provision has come down. Which creates a risk of material misstatement of overstatement of inventory and understatement of provision, which creates the risk of overstatement of inventory and understatement of provision. Overstatement of inventory and understatement of provision. Look at the next. Students, we will address this point as well now. See, senior management remuneration, their compensation or remuneration is based on achievement of sales targets. So what will happen? The sales manager, he is the one who authorizes the selling prices. Then what will happen? He will undercut the prices to dump more sales. So sales will go up. Students, he will get more bonus, but ultimately those goods will be returned and you will not turn any profit. Actually, you will make losses. Window dressing, overstatement of revenue, fraudulent financial reporting risk, window dressing. So write down third one. Number 3. Third one, risk of window dressing, comma, fraudulent financial reporting. Risk of window dressing, fraudulent financial reporting. So below that, write down the sales manager, given the authority, to authorize the sales prices. Sales manager given the authority to authorize the sales prices. At a time when senior management compensation is based on when senior management compensation is based on achievement of revenue target, there is a risk of material misstatement that sales manager may reduce the prices. Sales manager may reduce the prices. Sales manager may reduce the prices sales manager may reduce the prices to increase the sales value. Without sales manager may reduce the sales prices to increase the sales value reduce the prices to increase the sales value without considering the cost of the unit. Without considering the cost of the unit. Without considering the cost of the unit. Next line. Furthermore, there is a risk of fraudulently overstate. Risk of fraudulently overstate the revenue. To get more remuneration. Fraudulently overstate the revenue to get more remuneration, more compensation, more remuneration. Okay, done. So students, we will address the next one. Abhi ඊළඟ issue එක address කරමු where the revenue recognition of them. So they recognize revenue. If you can remember, they have sales centers in Colombo and appointed 10 dealers island wide. Sales are recognized at the point of delivery. Deliver karaddi sales recognize කරනවා, but no other condition attached like what? Sales return. Now dealers will anyway return the goods. So at that time you have to reduce that revenue recognized, because you can send the goods and recognize them as revenue, but if the dealers do not sell, what happens? Dealer ගෙන් ඕක විකුණුන්නේ නැත්තම් මොකද වෙන්නේ? That will not be your sales, right? ඒක ඔයාගේ sales නෙමෙයි. So you have to reverse that sales by a credit note, which has to happen. So if that is not done, revenue will be overstated as well. So write down fourth risk of material misstatement. Fourth risk of material misstatement. Number 4, heading risk of overstatement of revenue. Risk of overstatement of revenue. Risk of overstatement of revenue. So below that explain, there is a risk of overstatement of revenue So risk of overstatement of revenue, whereby the items which are returned by the dealers may still be recognized as items which are returned by the dealers items which are returned by the dealers items which are returned by the dealers may still be recognized as revenue violating SLFRS 15 still be recognized as revenue violating SLFRS 15. As such, revenue is an area of risk of material misstatements. As such, revenue is an area of risk of material misstatements. So far, I think we have written down about 4 areas, right? 4 risk of material misstatements. Students, next one write down, students. Lease, abhi lease se gum, right? Lease creditors. Whether Now they have gone for a new premises. So previous lease as well as the asset has to be removed from the books. So that particular transactions or the journal entries has to be passed to remove lease. Lease එක අයින් කරන්න journal entries pass කරන්න ඕන. So write down in the notebook. Notebook එක ලියන්න. Overstate heading number 5, overstatement of lease liabilities. Overstatement of lease liability and assets. 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 So below that explain, since the company has moved to a new premises, since the company has moved to a new premises, the previous lease liability and the related asset previous lease liability and the related asset has to be removed. Previous lease liability and the related asset has to be removed. Has to be removed. Removed from the books of accounts. From the books of accounts. However, if it is not derecognized, the lease liability and assets are overstated. The lease liability and assets are overstated. Lease liability and assets are overstated. Write down number 6. Risk of material misstatement number 6. See the amounts of writing you have to write, okay? Look at number 6. Write down. We will address the point of the exchange loss, right? So write there. Foreign exchange adjustments. Foreign exchange adjustments. Foreign exchange adjustments. Foreign exchange adjustments. So below that, write down, due to the rapid volatility in foreign currency, due to the rapid volatility in foreign currency, due to the rapid volatility of foreign currency, due to the rapid volatility of foreign currency, there is a risk due to the rapid volatility in foreign currency, there is a risk of material misstatements that the relevant foreign exchange adjustments may not be adjusted. Relevant foreign exchange adjustments may not be adjusted in the financial statements. Relevant foreign exchange adjustments may not be adjusted in the financial statements, resulting in an overstatement of or understatement of assets and liabilities. Overstatement or understatement of assets and liabilities. So we will sum up everything. Right now, 6 risk of material misstatements we have written. 6 risk of material misstatements we have written down. So we will now sum it up. අපි එක ළමයි පොඩක් summarize කරමු. Why? Now the finance staff also have resigned in bulk. So we have to address that point as well. So write down. There is a fraud red flag. There is a fraud red flag. Fraud red flag that the entire finance team has resigned. The total finance team, right? එකෙක් නැතුව ඔක්කොම අයින් වෙලා. Entire finance team has resigned. The entire finance team has resigned in March 2023. Entire finance team has resigned in March 2023. And that frauds are prevailing and risk of material misstatements are happening in the organization. Frauds are prevailing and risk of material misstatements are happening in the organization. So you earned 10 marks altogether. ලකුණු 10ක් හම්බුණා, right? So Sri Lanka auditing standard number 200, 315, 330 response to risk and 240 frauds are the standards that we are going to use to answer part A. Okay, students, shall we now with that, shall we move to part B? You plan to perform substantive analytical procedures on sales, because sales we have identified is a significant risk area. So a greater degree of risk is there in sales because of the revenue recognition issue, right? Because of the window dressing risk. So auditors have planned to perform substantive analytical procedures, the relationships, the trends and things like that, product wise, right? They wanted to, I would say, analyze revenue. Assess the feasibility of performing substantive analytical procedures on sales for the year ended 31st March 2024. Whether to perform, can we perform analytical procedures on sales? I'm asking from you, students. Can we directly apply analytical procedures on sales figure in these financial statements? In these financial statements, can we directly analyze revenue? Revenue analyze කරන්න පුළුවන් ද කෙලින්ම ළමයි? Can we do? Can we have a reliability, a sense of reliability on the management's financial statements to apply analytical procedures? Because we have to do the numbers work on the financial statements and accounts prepared by the management. Can we rely on those financial statements from this information? Yes or no එකක් දෙන්න බලන්න. අපිට rely වෙන්න පුළුවන්ද මේ accounts සම්බන්ධව? Can we rely on these financial statements? Can I have a yes or no from all of you, people who have joined? Yes or no? To apply analytical procedures. What do you think? What do you think, students? Hasita, yes, the point you have told on the earlier case, due to drop in sales, management pressure, inflate revenue, yes, that's the risk of window dressing. To the point, right? Very good. Good point. Can you rely on these financial statements? For me, can't. I can't directly apply analytical procedures on these financial statements because, students, one thing, the sales staff, the finance staff is new to the organization. So there can be issues with that. And also sales, the risk of window dressing is there. And also what? And also revenue recognition risk is there. So first and foremost, what I'm going to do, I will be performing test of controls and risk assessment on sales. Test of controls and risk assessment on sales I will be doing. I will be evaluating the internal controls over revenue. I will be performing a risk assessment on sales. If my risk assessment and test of controls proves me that risk is lower, then only I will be applying analytical procedures on revenue. If not, if my test of controls gives me an idea that, oh, these sales numbers are not reliable, I will not apply analytical procedures on revenue because those numbers are not reliable. Okay, understood. Shall we write down the answer? So write down answer to part B. In order to apply in order to apply substantive analytical procedures on sales. In order to apply substantive analytical procedures on sales, comma, the auditors must be satisfied with the reliability of the sales data. Auditors must be satisfied with the reliability of the sales data. Must be satisfied with the reliability of sales data in the financial statements. Must be satisfied with the reliability of sales data in the financial statements. Whereas in SSL there are two major risks. In SSL there are two major risks. On the reliability of sales. Two major risks on the reliability of sales. Number one, risk of window dressing. Number one, risk of window dressing. Number two, risk of revenue recognition. Next line, as such, auditors unable to directly perform. As such, auditors unable to directly perform substantive analytical procedures. Unable to directly perform substantive analytical procedures. Next line, auditors should first perform. Unable to perform substantive analytical procedures. Directly unable to perform substantive analytical procedures. Next line, therefore the auditor should first perform a risk assessment. Using a test of controls. using test of controls, as well as risk assessment procedures, using test of controls as well as risk assessment procedures. Next line, if the auditors are satisfied, on the reliability of the revenue figures, if the auditors are satisfied with the reliability of revenue figures, he may proceed with performing substantive analytical procedures on revenue. He may proceed with performing substantive analytical procedures on revenue. Full stop. Right. Look at part C. Students, in the exam also you got to write these kind of, I would say, comprehensive answers. These things, you need to do that. To do that, 6 and 7 questions read at the reading time. Don't keep it to read at the examination time. Okay, so let's move on to part C. C balan. SSL has produced the annual report of the board of directors on the affairs of the company along with the audited financial statements for the year ended 31st March 2024. So they prepared an annual report together with the audited financial statements. Explain the auditor's responsibility on the annual report of the board of directors on the affairs of the company. So what happened? The management has prepared annual report that includes the audited accounts and the audit report and other information as well. So examiner is asking, what's the auditor's responsibility on the annual report? Students, when an annual report pack is being prepared, annual report pack will have audit report, audited financial statements, and many more other reports as well. Make ඇතුළේ වෙන වෙන report ගොඩකුත් තියෙනවා. What are the other reports that are there? වෙන තියෙන reports මොනවද? You may have other reports like chairman's message, CEO's message, corporate governance, risk management, corporate social responsibility, those kind of reports also during the last year. And also reports about 5-year forecast of the company, share price information, top management, their profiles and all. All this information is there in the annual report, together with the audited accounts and financial statements. What is the danger we have? Students, Sri Lanka auditing standard number 720. SLAS 720 says that there can be material misstatements or inconsistencies in other information. Other information, not the audited accounts, audited financial statements. In the other information, there can be material inconsistencies and material misstatements. Material inconsistencies means, students, sometimes figures in the other information may be contradicting with figures in the audited financial statements. Like, auditor may say revenue is 100 million, but the chairman's statement may say revenue is 200 million. Material inconsistencies, contradictions. Sometimes chairman may correct, sometimes auditors may wrong. Chairman correct, auditor wrong. Can happen. Or sometimes, students, other information like chairman's statement may say complete false statement which is not relevant to audited accounts, which readers may see this statement is incorrect. So other information will have those problems. Maybe material inconsistencies with the audited accounts, the figures, or maybe plain false misstated facts. These two issues will happen. Inconsistency තියෙන්නත් පුළුවන් ළමයි මේ වගේ issue එකක් තියෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. So what is the auditor's responsibility? Sri Lanka Auditing Standard number 720 says auditor's audit scope covers the audited financial statements only. However, even though we are not responsible for other information, prior to the annual report issued to the general public, we have a responsibility to read. Other information tika general public eකට release කරන්න ඉස්සෙල්ලා, prior to this information is released to the general public, we got to read them. මේවා අපි කියවන්න ඕන ළමයි. We got to read them. Other information, read and identify those issues. And if we identify material inconsistencies or material misstatements of facts in the other information, we have to take actions on them. Sometimes we may request the audit committee to correct them. මේවා හදන්න කියලා කියන්න පුළුවන්. Sometimes we may tell them, we may seek legal opinion from a lawyer. Why? If those other information contains false statement, that may have an impact on the auditor sometimes. So we may consider legal opinion as well. Discuss with the audit committee, non-executive directors. Or if needed, we may resign from the audit as well if those statements are so false. Agree? So shall we write down? Answer is based on Sri Lanka Auditing Standard number 720. So write down. As per SLAUS 720, as per Sri Lanka Auditing Standard number 720, SLAUS 720, comma, auditor's responsibility on other information comma, contained with audited financial statements. Comma, it is established that the auditor's audit opinion covers only the audited financial statements. Covers only the audited financial statements. However, SLAUS 720 says, Sri Lanka Auditing Standards number 720 says, SLAUS 720 says, the auditors should read, SLAUS 720 says, auditors should read the other information contained in the annual report. Should read the other information contained in the annual report. Annual report එකේ තියෙන other information අපි කියවන්න ඕන. Should read the other information contained in the annual report. When reading other information, the auditor may identify write in a different color lamai. Write down in a different color. May identify material inconsistencies between audited financial statement figures, material inconsistencies between audited financial statement figures and the other information. Number 2, material misstatements of facts. Material misstatements of facts. Next line, if such items are identified, right? If such items are identified, comma, the auditor shall respond by කොහොමද respond කරන්නේ? Number 1, discuss with the management and those charged with governance. Shall discuss with the management and those charged with governance. Shall discuss with the management and those charged with governance. Number 1. Number 2, shall discuss with the management and those charged with governance. Number 2, shall see whether audited financial statements or other information needs amendment. Audited financial statements or other information needs amendment. See whether audited financial statements or other information needs amendment. Audited financial statements or other information needs amendment. මේ දෙකේ මොකද amend කරන්න ඕන? We have to see. Next one. If management disagree to make the amendments, sometimes students other information needs amendment, right? If management disagrees to make the amendment, if management disagree to make amendments, discuss with the management, consider legal opinion, consider legal opinion, and if the matter is serious, may consider resignation. If the matter is serious, may consider resignation. මේක ලොකු issue එකක් නෑ ළමයි. අමු බොරුවක් කියලා නෑ, right? If the matter is so serious, may consider resignation. Matter is so serious, may consider resignation. Full stop. Okay, so that's students question number 6. It's a marathon answer, 20 marks. That's why I always tell you, be focused on these students. These two questions, question number 6 and 7, will garner you 40 marks altogether. That's why I'm again and again, time and time, highlighting you the importance of focusing on these two questions more, right? In an ideal scenario, you all have to do at least, I would say, 6-7 previous past papers. Past papers, 6 to 7 previous past papers on these. These two questions should be done in 6 to 7 past paper questions. Okay. Shall we move to question number 7? Before that, do you need a 5 minutes kind of particular bio break? විනාඩි 5ක විතර bio break එකක් ඕනද? Okay, no. So we had about 2 hours of discussion. පැය දෙකක් විතර අපි discuss කරා. So therefore we will take about 5 minutes of quick break. පොඩි quick break එකක් ගමු ළමයි. 5 minutes of quick break, and after that we will meet up again and we will continue from question number 7. So now it's 3:35. We can meet in 5 minutes, somewhere around 3:40, and we will continue our good work. So stay connected, because question number 7 in 5 minutes we will be starting. Okay. So just a quick thought, right, before we start our second question for the day, that is question number 7, students. It's all about now, these days your exam is fast approaching. So ideally, students, per day, 6-7 hours. Some students I know, when we discuss with those students, they allocate at least 7 hours per day for their studies. So that sort of a commitment is needed, students. And when I say allocating 7 hours, 6 hours per day, sometimes you may be thinking, Amma, meka komada karande, how we can do this? But students, there are students who are allocating that particular time period for studies, right? ඒ වගේ වෙලාවක් තමන්ගේ පාඩම් වලට allocate කරන ළමයි ඉන්නවා. There are students like that. So therefore, everybody, my humble request to all of you is to allocate adequate time for your studies, because studying is what makes you success, right? පුළුවන් තරම් පාඩම් කරන්න. As much as possible, do the studies. Very important, right? එක කරන්න ඕන. You got to do that. right? We'll take another 1 minute and we will start thereafter, right? Right. Students, shall we start now? Okay. Question number 7. Let's read the requirement, right? Again, start reading the examiner's requirement first. Right? Based on the examiner's requirement, we will go ahead. Question number 7. Examiner's requirement, part A. Look at it. Outline the actions the auditor should take on the matters or observations identified upon the completion of the audit of Neon. Outline the actions the auditor should take. Auditor's response. Actions the auditor should take on the matters or observations identified after the audit work has been done. Audit field work would have been done, මේ ටික කරාට පස්සේ ඔයාගේ actions මොනවද වෙන්න ඕන? What sort of actions you have to take? Let's read. So what is the auditor's response should be? What sort of a response auditor has to do? See. The audit of the financial statements of Neon PLC, Neon, is in progress. Audit of Neon PLC is in progress. Audit ගැන ගමන් තියෙන. The most recent financial year end of Neon was 31st March 2024. So financial year ends on 31st March 2024. Its principal activity since 2000, year 2000, has been the manufacturing of electronic chips. They were manufacturing electronic chips. Students, Neon is a PLC, listed public company. So in your mind you have to figure out, this is a listed public company, what should I do? Now specific set of risk comes in if the company is a listed public company. The governance structure, right, the corporate governance, the reporting requirements, those are also there. So in terms of that, the risk of non-compliance also come into play. Non-compliance risk also come into play lamai because of this. So Neon is in progress. එකක් තියෙනවා Neon PLC. And also lamai, their main business is electronic chips. එතරම් පොඩි risk එකක් තියෙනවා. What? Electronic chips are smaller in size but larger in value. So in terms of inventory, you have a risk of theft, being stolen. Inventory being theft, stolen, ඒ වගේ ප්‍රශ්නක් තියෙනවා. So you find those issues as well. Okay, එතන ප්‍රශ්න දෙකකුත් තියෙනවා. So smaller in size, larger in value inventory. And electronic chips means technological obsolescence risk is also there. Technology can change, because of that inventory may be getting obsolete. Technology එක වෙනස් වෙලා ළමයි inventory obsolete වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. That risk is also there. Let's read. SKS Associates. SKS is the statutory auditor of Neon. SKS is the statutory auditor of Neon since its inception. So from the time Neon has started, SKS is the auditor. So for the current year's audit, the auditor has determined overall materiality level of 50 million and a performance materiality level of 38 million. So see the situation. So over a longer period of time, this is your audit client. SKS Associates, their audit client is Neon PLC. And so from the ethical perspective, so long period of time, same client. So therefore we have to get ourselves safeguarded against self-review threat. අපි ළමයි මේ self-review threat එකෙන් safeguard වෙන්නත් ඕන. We have to safeguard against the self-review threat as well. එතන ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා. We have that problem as well. The overall materiality level is set at rupees 50 million. So OM, overall materiality level 50 million rupees. Overall materiality එක දාලා තියෙනවා ළමයි million 50යි. And the performance materiality is 38 million. So we have to evaluate risk of material misstatements against that materiality level as well. 50 million overall materiality, performance materiality 38 million. Sri Lanka auditing standard number 320, audit materiality. Overall materiality, performance materiality, හොඳට බලා ගන්න. SLA was 320. Okay. See. The finance manager at Neon, finance manager of Neon, who is a chartered accountant, he reports to the chief financial officer, CFO. Finance manager is a chartered accountant, he reports to the CFO, who is a qualified accountant. Sorry, CFO. The accountant, who is a qualified accountant, left the company in January 2024 and the accountant post was filled in April 2024 only. we have a problem. Why? Students, the accountant who is a qualified accountant left the company in January. That position vacancy was filled in April. For 3 months, that position was kept vacant. So from the risk angle, we have a huge risk. Why? During that 3-month period, ඔය මාස 3 තමයි ළමයි, the account finalizing journal entries are being passed. January to March. Account finalizing journal entries are being passed during those 3 months. ඔය මාස 3 තමයි ඔය pass කරන්නේ. Account finalizing journal entries are passed during that time. So if it is during that time that you are passing these journal entries, මේ journal entry pass කරන්නේ ඒ වෙලාවෙන් නම් you need to have an accountant there. But accountant is not there. There can be risk of material misstatements. එතන ළමයි risk of material misstatements can happen. Can happen. Why? The accountant position was vacant. Frauds could have happened. Okay. So we got to be very careful in reading further. ඉස්සරහට කියවගෙන යද්දී පරිස්සමෙන් කියවන්න. The following were noted by the external auditor of Neon during the annual audit. When you were performing the annual audit, these items were identified. Number 1, as per the defined policy, the journal entries are prepared by accounts assistant. Someone below the accountant, journal entries are prepared. Accounts assistant prepared, which are then approved by the accountant. But accountant was not there from January to March. The most important period, accountant was not there. He couldn't approve them. And posted by the accounts assistant accountant. Assistant accountant posted. Accounts assistant prepare, accountant approve, assistant accountant post that to the ledger. Segregation of duties. But one important part, the approver accountant was not there in the last 3 months. It was noted that journal entries from January 24 to 31st March 2024 have not been approved. As a result, the auditors performed detailed testing to ensure these journal entries are valid. හරිනේ කතාව ළමයි. Since the accountant was not available, there was no one to approve these. So what the auditors have done? Auditors have done a detailed testing on these journal entries. මේ journal entries වලට ළමයි detailed testing එකක් කරා. Right? මොකද accountant කෙනෙක් හිටියේ නැති හන්දා. So what are the things? So what actions the auditor? So what are the actions that the auditor should take on the matters, observations identified in this? මේකේ වැඩවලට auditor දාන්න ඕන observations මොනවද ළමයි? Actions මොනවද? What are the actions he has to take? What are the actions should have taken for those unapproved journal entries? These journal entries may be students, maybe let's say provisions, maybe impairments, maybe students larger value transactions towards the end, accounts finalizing journal entries, maybe those kind of very important journal entries would have been. මේවා ළමයි ටිකක් important journal entries වෙන්න පුළුවන්. So what are the actions you have to take? Number 1, if I am the auditor, I will discuss this with the management. I will ask for board ratified approvals. Ratifications illano. What is ratification? Ratification means without approval if something has done, approval නැතුව මොනවා හරි කරා නම් subsequent the approvers has to ratify them. They need to say, even though it is without approval they have done, it is in line with the policy. Kila ratify කරන්න ඕන. Ratify. I will request for those ratification. I will request for board meeting minutes and review them for those approvals. Agree. Ratifications, review board meeting minutes I will be checking. And sometimes students subsequent transactions also I will be checking. So provisions එම බලන්න ළමයි. I will go to let's say April, May, June, subsequent transactions I will be inspecting. I will be inspecting those subsequent transactions as well. A subsequent transaction with බලනවා ළමයි මම. I will do that. Agree. See, read. Employees are provided advances. And these are to be settled within 30 days of receipt. Like salary advances are given to employees. Within 30 days of receiving them, they have to settle them. However, advances amounting to 5.6 million, which is below the materiality level. No, 38 million is the performance materiality. No, 5.6 million remained unsettled for over 90 days. And no follow-up actions have been taken as well. For these, there were no follow-up actions have been taken. The amount is considered to be below the materiality amount determined for the audit. Audit take amount material ne. So what auditors have to do? Students, auditor have to discuss with the management. Obtain a schedule of whom the employees these items have been granted. These advances granted to which employees I have to get the schedule. And see the reasons for any delay of settlement. Sometimes, students, these amounts may be granted, and some for, let's say, close family members of that particular employee may be terminally ill. For their medication expenses, these were being granted. Sometimes, students, company would have taken a decision until it is sorted, we will not recover them. Some are a decision gannadi. So, do we have approvals for those? Or what are the follow-up actions have been taken? I will check the subsequent bank statements and see whether those were recovered. Recover karada kiyala ambalno. Auditors have to do that. Third, one bank reconciliation statement with respect to a non-operating bank account has not been prepared. For a non-operating bank account, the bank reconciliation statement has not been prepared. Account operate pen nae lamai. It's a non-operating account, the bank reconciliation has not been done. The bank statement balance, the last balance, agreed to the cash book balance as well. Statement balance ekai, cash book balance ekai agree una, and the account is also a non-operating account. What are the procedures I am going to do? What do you going to do? I will definitely call for bank confirmation. Confirmation of balance. Bank statement I will call for bank confirmation. Confirmation and I will go to, let's say, subsequent months, April, May, June, and see whether there are any transactions happen. Transaction and I may do one or two bank reconciliations by myself. As auditor, I will do some reconciliations as well. Discuss with the management. Do some own reconciliations. Evaluate subsequent events. I can do that. These are my responses. Can you all see that? Then we will write down the answer. Right. Shall we write down? Right there. The auditor can take the auditor can take following actions. On the given scenarios. On the given scenarios. Write down Roman number 1. On the journal entry issue, right? Or journal entry issue. Write down number 1. Auditor should discuss with the management. Auditor should discuss with the management. And those charged with governance. Should discuss with the management and those charged with governance. And request for a ratification approval. Request for a ratification approval from the management. Request for a ratification approval from the management on the journal entries passed. Ratification approval on the journal entries passed. Number 1. Pass karabu journal entries or ratification then. Continue below that. Explain further. For each and every journal entry is passed. For each and every journal entry is passed. For each and every journal entry is passed. Comma. For each and every journal entry passed, comma. Perform substantive procedures. Perform substantive procedures. For each and every journal entry passed, comma, perform substantive procedures. Perform substantive procedures by the auditor. Next one. For journal entries on provisions, as well as contingent liabilities, etc. Provisions as well as contingent liabilities, etc. provisions as well as contingent liabilities, etc. The auditor shall inspect the subsequent period transactions. Inspect the subsequent period transactions. Inspect the subsequent period transactions to evaluate the adequacy. To evaluate the adequacy. To evaluate the adequacy. Go to number 2. On the employee salary advances, right? On number 2, write down obtain a schedule of employees. Obtain a schedule of employees for whom salary advances given. Obtain a schedule of employees for whom salary advances given. For whom salary advances given. As well as inspect for the reasons. Inspect for the reasons the arrears and delay. Inspect for the reasons on arrears and delay. Reasons on arrears and delay on the recovery of salary advances. Reasons for delay on the recovery of salary advances. Next one. Discuss with the management. Now we need to see whether there is a provision needed, right? Discuss with the management. Discuss with the management. Discuss with the management to identify whether discuss with the management to identify whether there is a need for a provisioning. Whether there is a need for provisioning. To identify whether there is a need for provisioning on overdue salary payables. On overdue salary advance payable. On overdue salary advance payable. Next one. Inspect the subsequent bank statements. Inspect the subsequent bank statements. inspect the subsequent bank statements to identify the subsequent bank statements to identify whether the salaries were recovered subsequent to the financial period. Whether salaries were recovered subsequent to the financial period. Right. Students, third one about that bank reconciliation on the non-operating bank account. So write down. Auditor should discuss with the management. Auditor should discuss with the management. Should discuss with the management to identify the rationale for keeping a non-operating bank account. To identify the rationale for keeping a non-operating bank account. The rationale for keeping a non-operating bank account. Number 2, auditor should inspect the subsequent bank statements and cash book entries. Bank statements and cash book entries to identify whether the account is operational or not. To identify whether the account is operational or not. Next one, auditor can call confirmations from the bank. Call a confirmation, right? Auditor can call a confirmation from the bank. Last one. Auditor can perform a bank reconciliation by himself. Auditor can perform a bank reconciliation by himself. Taman taniyama bank reconciliation එක කරන්නත් පුළුවන්. Auditor can perform a bank reconciliation by himself. Full stop. That is part A lamai. Part A. Done? So shall we move to everybody part B? Abi part B yamuda. See part B. Lot of reading has to be done, right? Assess whether you agree with the audit team member's statement regarding the CAM. What is CAM? Key Audit Matter. Sri Lanka Auditing Standard number 701, SLAS 701, Key Audit Matter. Students, there is a separate auditing standard called Key Audit Matters, which sometimes auditors will include into the audit opinion, audit report, a Key Audit Matter paragraph, SLAS 701. So examiner is asking, assess whether you agree with the audit team member's statement regarding the CAMs. Students, just to give you a kind of a brief, right? Videos, if you can watch our theory videos, which we have discussed in detail about CAM. We have discussed, students, Sri Lanka Auditing Standard number 701, Key Audit Matters say, in certain instances, auditors have to include in his audit report key audit matters. Key audit matters are the most important matters as per auditor's professional judgment will form a part of the audit report. So these key audit matters are of several matters. Key audit matters කියලා අපි audit report එකේ දානවා matters කීපයක්. First one, right? We add something as key audit matter. Key audit matter කියලා ළමයි අපි we put certain matters. The first matter that we put as key audit matter is that we put a matter like matters that the management has used significant audit judgments. Management has used significant management judgments. If management has used their judgments in certain areas, we will place that as a key audit matter and we will put that in our audit report for the shareholders to read. Like what? Key, I would say, high level of impairment, right? Loku impairment එකක් වුණා නම්, or maybe high level of assumptions used by the management, we put that as a key audit matter. Significant management judgments, number one. Number two, key risk areas in the audit, if we have identified. Audit එකේ අපි හොයාගත්ත ලොකු risk area එකක්. Key risk areas of the audit, significant risk areas of the audit, we will put that. Significant risk areas of the audit, or significant audit judgment, management judgments that they have done, or maybe significant transactions in the audit. Audit එකේ තිබිච්ච මොනවා හරි ලොකු transactions, significant transactions that we have identified, we put them as key audit matters. And ඒවා ළමයි අපි key audit matters විදියට පෙන්නනවා. So what are the key audit matters, students? Significant judgments that we made, අපි කරපු ලොකු judgments. Then I would say significant risk areas that were built in, and also key transactions. Significant judgments, significant risk areas, and key transactions, we put them as key audit matters. The point here is, students, key audit matters, Sri Lanka Auditing Standard number 701 says, will not result in material misstatements. ඒක හොඳට ඔළුවට ගන්න ඕන. Key audit matters හන්ද ළමයි material misstatement වෙන්නේ නැහැ. If for any matter, if a material misstatement happens, there is a separate area in the audit report called basis for modified opinion paragraph for us to describe them. මොනවා හරි එකකින් ළමයි matter එකකින් misstatement එකක් වුණොත් ඒකට අපිට basis for modified opinion paragraph එක තියෙනවා for us to discuss. Key audit matter එකට ඒව දාන්නේ නැහැ. Remember that as well. Key audit matter means those matters because of that lamai modification of opinion will not happen. Opinion will not be modified because of that, but the most significant matters that you feel that the auditors have to put to the shareholders' understanding. So examiner asking assess whether you agree with the audit team member's statement regarding the key audit matters for 7 marks. Outline the procedures that the auditor should perform and report in the auditor's report in respect of one key audit matter identified in B above. Outline procedures you got to perform as auditor on any matter identified as a key audit matter on B above. Read the requirements of the examiner again. Examiner requirement එක කියවන්න බලන්න ළමයි. Okay, right. See whether these given areas are key audit matters or not. Let's see. See, the auditor's risk assessment revealed following. Auditor has performed a risk assessment. Auditor lamai risk assessment එකක් කරා. Auditor did a risk assessment. It revealed following. එකේ මෙන්න මේවට කිව්වා. A. Finished goods as at 31st March 2024 amounted to 345 million. Finished goods 345 million. This was a 40% increase compared to the previous year. Right? Finished goods was a 40% increase from the previous year. 345 million. The management has made an assessment on the net realizable value. So 345 million, because we know Sri Lanka auditing accounting standard number 2, inventory should be valued at cost or net realizable value, whichever is lower. inventory value should be valued at cost or net realizable value, whichever is lower. So they did a net realizable value estimation. So as per that net realizable value estimation, NRV, they made an assessment on that as it has faced an issue with selling price due to market competition. A detailed assessment on this, including judgments made in deriving NRV adjustment of 105 million was made available. Even though the cost is 345 million, students, net realizable value is below 105 million than that. මේකේ මිලියන 345කට කොස්ට් උනාට ළමයි net realizable value එක මිලියන 105කට වඩා අඩුයි. Below 105 million. So ideally what? 240 million. Net realizable value 240 million. So what you got to do? Ideally net realizable value has to be recorded. So cost of the inventory 345 million should be brought down to 240 million. 105 million write-off should be done. Million 105ක write-off එකක් කරන්න ඕන. A provision of 85 million had been made on the raw materials as at the balance sheet date. Only 85 million provision was done by the management. Is this a key audit matter or is this a misstatement? මේක key audit matter එකක්ද ළමයි මේක misstatement එකක්ද? What do you think? This is a plain bloody misstatement ළමයි. Make a misstatement එකක්. This is a misstatement. Why? This is not a key audit matter. This is a misstatement. Ideally, inventory should be valued at cost or net realizable value, whichever is lower. Based on that, there should be a write-off of 105 million that has to be done. Million 105ක write-off එකක් කරන්න ඕන, which is above the materiality level. But they have only done 85 million. So, inventory overstated. Inventory overstated. Provisions are understated. Profits are overstated. Profit එක වැඩිපුර පෙන්නන්න. Profits, assets overstated. Material misstatement. Ideally ළමයි, there should be a modified audit opinion has to be given. Qualified opinion. This is not a key audit matter. මේක key audit matter එකක් නෙමෙයි. Why? It's a misstatement. Not a significant risk area. It's a misstatement. Financial statements contain a material misstatement. 105 million. Agree. So it's not classified as a key audit matter. Look at next one. Neon has recognized a deferred tax asset of 15 million as at 31st March on tax losses incurred. There were tax losses. Tax loss වෙලා තියෙනවා. Company has made a tax loss. So you know Sri Lanka Accounting Standard number 24, deferred taxation. Under deferred tax, you have to create deferred tax assets on tax losses incurred. So these deferred tax asset students you make based on judgments, based on assumptions, assumed figures, assumptions, you are making judgments. So is that a misstatement? That is not a misstatement. Make a misstatement. This is assumption based judgment. So key audit matter or not? Key audit matter. Make a key audit matter. Number 2. Agree. Number 3. Neon carried out an impairment assessment on property. Company did an impairment assessment on property. Impairment එකක් කරා. LKS 36. Plant and equipment due to the current business performance. The assessment was done by the accountant. And the assumptions used for the assessment were approved by the audit committee. It was concluded that the assets were not impaired as at 31st March 2024. What had happened? Management did an impairment assessment. Management එක ළමයි impairment assessment එකක් කරා. Impairment assessment means what? You do impairment assessment based on cash flow assessment. Present value of future cash flows, the value in use assessment you do. Okay, so fair value and value in use, you do the assessment. So those are what? Those are estimated figures. Those are judgments made by the management based on assumptions. So based on that, there were no impairment needed. So recoverable value assessment in impairment, value in use, all these use lot of judgments of the management. Like what? Like the cost of capital, like the future cash flow assessment, fair value assessment. All these use lot of judgments of the management. Judgments, assumption-based judgments are done by the management. Not a misstatement. It's a misstatement. It's what? It's the management judgment. So you can provide that as a key audit matter if needed. Last one. The actuary who has been involved with the company for over 3 years issued the report on the valuation of the retirement benefit obligations. So they have done a retirement benefit obligation valuation as at 31st March 2024. The valuation involved certain assumptions. May valuation ke assumptions use kara. They used certain assumptions. Again, what? Management significant judgments done. Determining the value of the retirement benefit obligation. According to past audit experience, there had been no misstatements noted. Misstatement ekak naha. But this is what? Key audit matter again. Make a key audit matter ekak. Why? Retirement benefit obligations, valuations, assumptions based. So key audit matter. The balance as at 31st March 2024 amounted to rupees 86 million. Once again, assumptions based figure, key audit matter. If anyone can't remember, key audit matter standard balan lamai, right? A member of the audit team stated that the above points will be key audit matters. Me okkoma key audit matters kele akino. No, first matter is not a key audit matter. It is a material misstatement. In the audit for the year ended 31st March 2024, as the above amounts noted are material. Material nisa ehmai kele akiyane. No, we don't say. First one is a material misstatement. So, shall we write down? Required B. Assess whether you agree with the audit team member's statement regarding the camps. So, write down. Right there. As per Sri Lanka Auditing Standard number 701, as per Sri Lanka Auditing Standard number 701, the key audit matters are key audit matters are the most significant matters. Most significant matters. Most significant matters that has impacted the audit, which the shareholder should know, which the shareholder should know. Which the shareholder should know. So write down, as per SLA US 701, as per Sri Lanka Auditing Standard number 701, as per SLA US 701, following are examples of key audit matters. as per syllabus 701, comma, following are the examples of key audit matters. Following are the examples of key audit matters. Number 1. Significant audit risk areas. Number 1. Significant audit risk areas. Number 2, significant management judgments. Significant management judgments. Number 3, major transactions. Major material transactions. Major material transactions. Major material transactions. So write down number 1. The overstatement of inventory. The overstatement of inventory. Write down. Overstatement of inventory. Continue writing. Number 1, right? Or inventory case. Overstatement of inventory, comma, material misstatement. Material misstatement. Not a CAM, not a key audit matter. Material misstatement, not a key audit matter, underline. Not a CAM. Since, below that explained, since the full write-off of NRV adjustment of 105 million rupees, the full write-off of NRV adjustment of rupees 105 million of NRV adjustment the full write-off of 105 million of NRV adjustment was not made. Was not made. Because of that, the inventory is overstated. Because of that, the inventory is overstated. ඒක නිසා ළමයි inventory එක overstate වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. Inventory is overstated. Which is not creating a key audit matter, not creating a key audit matter, which is not creating a key audit matter, and a basis for qualified opinion paragraph include, and basis for qualified opinion paragraph include, 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 to issue a qualified opinion, to issue a qualified opinion, to issue a qualified opinion. Basis for qualified opinion paragraph include, to issue a qualified opinion. Full stop. Number 2. Second one, deferred tax. Right there. Agree deferred tax key audit matter. Agree deferred tax key audit matter. Underline. Since significant assumptions are made, assumptions are made when creating the deferred tax asset, when creating the deferred tax asset, when creating the deferred tax asset, comma, it is considered as a key audit matter. Third one, impairment provision, key audit matter. Impairment provision, a key audit matter. Impairment provision, a key audit matter. Impairment provision, a key audit matter. Below that explain, since the impairment provision, since the impairment cash flow estimation, is based on impairment cash flow estimation is based on significant management judgments and assumptions. Significant management judgments and assumptions. Based on significant management judgments and assumptions. Significant management judgments and assumptions, comma, it is considered as a key audit matter. It is considered as a key audit matter. Last one, heading actuarial valuation of retirement benefit obligation. Actuarial valuation of retirement benefit obligations. Actuarial valuation of retirement benefit obligations, key audit matter. So below that explain, The professional valuer, when performing the actuarial valuation, the professional valuer, when performing the actuarial valuation, has made assumptions on the value. Has made assumptions on the value. Has made assumptions on the value, comma, which are significant management judgments. Which are significant management judgments. Which are significant management judgments. And hence classify as a key audit matter. Classify as a key audit matter. Full stop. Students, go to part C. Look at part C, everybody. Everybody, see this one. Outline the procedures that the auditor should perform and report in the auditor's report in respect of one key audit matter identified in B above. Outline the procedures that the auditor should perform and report in the auditor's report in respect of one key audit matter identified in this above. So we may say, students, the procedures on, I would say, actuarial valuation eකට අපි procedures ටිකක් කියමු. What we can do, students, use the work of an expert valuer, Sri Lanka Auditing Standard number 620. So as per Sri Lanka Auditing Standard number 620, if you are using the valuer's valuation report, we have to first establish valuer's qualification, experience, establish that. And after we obtain that valuation report, evaluate the reasonableness of the assumptions he has used. See whether the assumptions he has used are reasonable. Like what? It's an actuarial valuation of the retirement benefit obligation, no? People's age, the retirement time, whether those are reasonable or not, evaluate by the auditors. Right? As procedures. And see whether the source data has been obtained correctly. People's age, the kind of salary packages, whether those have been properly sourced from the source data. See whether those are there. Auditors also reperform some calculations. Do them. Establish whether those are correct. So write down answer to part C. Procedures on actuarial valuation. Procedures on actuarial valuation. Procedures on actuarial valuation. So below that explain. Number 1, as per SLAUS 620, as per SLAUS 620, comma, using the work of an expert. Using the work of an expert. as per syllabus 620 using the work of an expert, comma, auditor should evaluate the experience the qualifications of the valuer. Evaluate the qualifications and experience of the valuer. Number one. Number two, second one, evaluate the reasonability of assumptions used by the valuer. Evaluate the reasonability of assumptions used by the valuer. Such as employee age, reasonability of assumptions used by the valuer, such as employee age, time to retire, age, time to retire, etc. Evaluate the source data used. Evaluate the source data used. Evaluate the source data used and the reliability of such source data. Evaluate the source data used and the reliability of such source data. The reliability of such source data. Full stop. When a key audit matter paragraph included, when a key audit matter paragraph included, when a key audit matter paragraph included, key audit matter paragraph included, comma, auditor should clearly say, that his opinion is not modified. Opinion is not modified. Full stop. Right. Students, look at the part D, the last part for the day. Right? දවසේ අවසාන part එක 40 marks we have written today, right? That's quite a comprehensive answering for questions, right? Question answering comprehensive. Look at this. Part D. Analyze the threat to independence, if any, in undertaking the above proposed services, including safeguards SKs should have in place. So in one question, examiner asking, analyze the threat to independence. What are the threats to independence, if any, in undertaking the above proposed services, including safeguards SKs should have in place. So threat to independence, ethics, self-interest, self-review, advocacy, familiarity, and intimidation. Out of that 5, what is the threat to independence there? What are the ethical fundamental principles that are breached? And what are your safeguards proposed? Read. The management of Neon. Neon is a PLC, lamai. So Neon is a PLC. Since Neon is a PLC, share market listed company, certain services auditors can't do. Statutory external auditors. Now, SKS is a statutory external auditor. So they can't do certain services if the client, like here, is a listed public limited liability company. Like what? Statutory auditors, external auditors can't do financial reporting work, accounting karanna bෑ. If you are the auditors for a listed public company, financial reporting you can't do. You can't do internal auditing work. If you are the external auditor of a statutory public limited liability company, same company you can't do internal audit. You can't compute taxes, tax computation karanna bෑ. So likewise, there are certain services which are prohibited, like financial reporting, internal audit work, tax computation work, you can't do. C. Neon PLC is expecting to acquire another business. They are expecting to acquire another business as part of its diversification strategy and requires SKS audit firm to perform the buyer side due diligence. Due diligence as part of the acquisition process. The fee will be determined based on a percentage of the purchase consideration. Students, due diligence, where one company like Neon as the acquirer going to acquire another company, let's say company B, Neon PLC going to acquire company B. You as the auditors, SKS as the auditors of Neon, Neon has asked SKS to do a due diligence on the buying company, due diligence, like an investigation of it, and see whether the purchase consideration is reasonable or not. Whether the price that I am going to pay is reasonable on the net asset value. Do an investigation on this and report to me. And name a requirement. Normally due diligence can be done. Why? It's not audit, it's not financial reporting or whatever. Due diligence can be done. But the problem lies where? On the fee. Fee structure ke tamai lamai problem එක තියෙනවා. Why? Fee will be determined based on a percentage of the purchase consideration. Fee determined based on as a percentage of the purchase price. Purchase price එකේ value එකක් විදියට ළමයි fee එක ගන්න යන්නේ. So in that way I have a problem. එතන අපිට ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා. Why? Code of ethics, this is contingent fee. මේක ළමයි contingent fee. Fee determined based on an outcome which is prohibited to us. මේක මතකයි නේ? Ethics වල අපි කතා කරා. This is prohibited to us in ethics. This creates a self-interest threat. මේකෙන් ළමයි self-interest threat එකක් create වෙනවා. Auditors will always, if this kind of a fee arrangement there, auditors will always try to increase the fee. Fee එක increase කරගන්න තමයි auditor හදන්නේ. Auditor needs to increase the fee. Fee increase කරන්න තමයි try කරගන්නේ. So auditor has to be, should not do this. Due diligence can be done, but contingent fee arrangement like commission නේ percentage ගන්න යන්නේ. Commission අපිට ගන්න බෑ. Percentage ගන්න බෑ. We can do this, safeguard එකක් විදියට we can do this if the client agree for a flat fee, fixed fee. මිලියන් එකයි මිලියන් එකයි. එච්චරයි. නැතුව ගන්න ගානේ 110ක් කියලා බෑ. self interest threat, financial interest created. Understood? Shall we write down the answer? ඔක්කොම තේරුණා නේ? Did you understood it, guys? Due diligence you can do, but only the fee arrangement, contingent fee which is not suitable for us, because lamai, as per code of ethics, it is prohibited to get contingent fees. Fees should be a flat fee based on the time we spend. So write down heading self-interest threat, contingent fee. Self-interest threat, contingent fee. Self-interest threat, contingent fee. Below that explain. The auditors are facing a threat of financial interest. Auditors are facing a threat of financial interest. Threat of financial interest as a result of contingent fee arrangement. Contingent fee arrangement where the value of the fees, contingent fee arrangement where the value of the fees, is totally dependent on, where the value of the fees is totally dependent on an outcome of the due diligence assignment. An outcome of the due diligence assignment. An outcome of the due diligence assignment. Outcome of the due diligence assignment. An outcome of the due diligence assignment. Outcome of the due diligence assignment. Whereas such contingent fees will compromise auditors' objectivity. Such contingent fees will compromise auditors' objectivity and independence. Auditors' objectivity and independence. Such contingent fees will compromise auditor's objectivity and independence. Therefore, ideally, auditors shall reject the contingent fee arrangement. Shall reject the contingent fee arrangement. Contingent fee arrangement on the due diligence assignment. Shall reject the contingent fee arrangement on the due diligence assignment. Safeguards, write down safeguards. Number 1, discuss with Neon PLC's audit committee. Discuss with Neon PLC's audit committee. Discuss with Neon PLC's audit committee, number 1. Number 2, accept the due diligence assignment. Accept the due diligence assignment. If client agree for client agree for a fixed fee arrangement. Client agree for a fixed fee arrangement. Next line, however, if the client is not agreeable for a fixed fee, if the client is not agreeable for the fixed fee, reject the assignment. client is not agreeable for the fixed fee, comma, reject the assignment. Reject the assignment on due diligence. Full stop. Reject the assignment on due diligence. Full stop. Okay, students, so that ends our marathon discussion on one of the most recent past papers, the June 2024. Earlier in our previous videos, we have discussed about the previous parts of this paper, and then today we have discussed the section 3, question number 6 and 7 of the paper. So happy studying, students. Keep on studying, right? Keep these studies going on. These questions you got to do at least 2 to 3 times. Then only the points will go into your mind. We meet up once again like this, a live session, right? In addition to that, a lot of recorded videos are also available for you to watch, right, in our Infinity. So do these questions again and again. So do your studies, students. All the best. Continue, and we'll meet up in another video. Thank you very much.